The story begins in 401 BC in the heart of the Persian Empire. There, the legendary Spartan commander Clearchus and his loyal strategists made a fatal mistake. Trusting false promises of peace, they entered the tent of the Persian satrap Tissaphernes. However, instead of negotiations, a deadly trap awaited them, in which they were brutally murdered during a feast, thus depriving their huge mercenary army of their leaders. Without commanders, finding themselves in the heart of enemy territory, 10,000 Greek mercenaries began a desperate and painful journey home through the harsh lands of Anatolia. The famous historian Xenophon, who was among them, later described how the soldiers, exhausted by endless marches, encountered a phenomenon that was completely incomprehensible to the average person. They saw cities that did not rise toward the sun, but descended into the lifeless and frightening darkness of the underworld. The Greeks could only see dark entrances, but even they, hardened by battles, could not imagine what was hidden in that impenetrable darkness. In our time, secret CIA records have emerged that suggest that the special services were looking for not only historical artifacts in these boundless voids, but also forgotten technologies of ancient civilizations, capable of influencing human consciousness. But the main question remains unanswered. How could the people of that time build such structures using primitive copper tools? Extracting millions of tons of rock to the surface without leaving a trace is a task that seems impossible even with the help of modern powerful machines. But what did the Greeks actually discover thousands of years ago, and from whom were they hiding in these mysterious labyrinths? Let's travel back to 1963 to Cappadocia, Turkey, where a story unfolded that changed archaeology forever. Imagine a typical day in the life of an ordinary resident who was renovating his old house on a hillside. It was a mundane and seemingly boring task until strange and inexplicable events began to occur. His chickens, which had been peacefully wandering around the basement, began to disappear without a trace. Wanting to find out where his poultry was going, the owner carefully examined the room and discovered a small dark crack in the wall. The chickens squeezed through this crack and never returned. Picking up a heavy sledgehammer, the man decided to widen the mysterious opening to free his captives and struck the old stone with all his might. The stones crashed to the floor, but instead of solid rock, he was faced with impenetrable darkness stretching into the abyss. From this black void, a powerful stream of icy, foul-smelling air rushed at him, which apparently had not felt sunlight for centuries. This was not an ordinary old wine cellar or a cave washed out by water, because behind the wall of his house began a passage into a completely different, terrifying world. Derinkuyu, the deepest, most complex, and most mysterious underground city on Earth, had been rediscovered by humanity. Archaeologists who arrived at the site and descended into the breach initially felt skepticism, which quickly turned to shock and then to superstitious fear. Instead of the expected small shelter or a couple of rooms for storing grain, they discovered tunnels going deeper and deeper into the earth. The levels followed one after another, 3rd, 5th, 10th, and the researchers, having lost count, began to lose their sense of reality. The investigation revealed 18 floors extending 85 meters into the rock massif. To appreciate the grandeur of this scale, imagine a modern 25-story skyscraper turned upside down and dug deep into solid rock. This entire enormous space was carved out by hand in solid volcanic rock, without the use of lasers or drilling machines. The most surprising thing was not the scale, but what the scientists discovered in these endless corridors. It was not a temporary bunker for shelter from danger, but a real, autonomous metropolis with a developed life support system. Inside, residential quarters were discovered, designed for the permanent residence of 20,000 people. Just think about this incredible number. 20,000 people lived without a single ray of sunlight, buried under millions of tons of cold stone. Walking through the empty, echoing halls, the archaeologists could not believe their eyes for a long time and accept what they saw as reality. On the lower levels were huge stables, whose walls had been carefully hewn, and neat feeding troughs for animals had been cut into the stone floor. The ancient craftsmen were well aware that the unpleasant smell of manure would spread upwards, so they placed the livestock closer to the exit. Descending, the scientists discovered spacious kitchens with ceilings blackened by centuries of soot, where communal tandoors used to bake bread for thousands of residents still stood. The deeper the group descended into the abyss, the more intricate and mysterious its structure became. At a depth of several tens of meters, industrial wineries with grape presses, vast warehouses with provisions, armories, and even a full-fledged school were discovered. Imagine how children were born, studied, and grew up here, perhaps never seeing the real blue sky above them. Even a giant cross-shaped church carved out of a single monolith of rock was found there, testifying to the high level of spiritual culture of its inhabitants. Derinkuyu turned out to be just the beginning, the tip of a giant iceberg stretching deep into the earth. It soon became clear that beneath the hills of Cappadocia lies a whole system of such anthill cities, forming an invisible map underground. The cities of Kaimakli and Oz-Konak were discovered nearby, and more recently, in 2020, another huge complex was found in the Midyat area, which, according to preliminary data, may even exceed Derinkuyu in size. The most incredible discovery was that these cities were not isolated from each other, but were connected by tunnels stretching for many kilometers. It was a single underground system, a secret state hidden from prying eyes. During their research, scientists attempted to determine the volume of soil extracted and obtained astonishing results. To build the city of Derinkuyu alone, ancient builders had to hollow out and bring to the surface about 5 million tons of stone. In comparison, the famous Great Pyramid of Giza weighs about 6.5 million tons, but it was built in an open space with blocks stacked on top of each other. Here, however, the rock had to be extracted from narrow mines, working in the dark without electricity or special tools. This is the main mystery that baffles both geologists and historians around the world. Where did all this excavated soil go? Where are these 5 million tons of stone? When such a colossal amount of rock is extracted, mountains of spoil, huge slag heaps, should form on the surface, which would be visible even from orbit. However, in the vicinity of Derinkuyu, the landscape has remained pristine, and there are no traces of large-scale mining. What happened to this rock? Was it turned into dust by some unknown technology, or was it used for other purposes? In the villages of Cappadocia, old people still whisper ancient legends that these cities appeared overnight. According to them, their creators were not humans, but jinn, powerful spirits of fire who possess the power of thought and are capable of controlling matter. There are other legends that claim that the cities were built by mysterious angels who descended from heaven to hide from the wrath of the gods, together with their chosen ones. As you make your way through the endless, oppressive corridors, you feel a clammy sense of anxiety and someone's presence that never leaves you for a moment. The low ceilings, no more than 70 centimeters high, force you to constantly bend down, as if in a posture of submission. The walls weigh heavily. There are no straight lines here. Everything is rounded and flows smoothly into one another. Such architecture resembles not the creation of human hands, but the insides of a giant living creature or the lair of an unknown beast. Official science explains this phenomenon with volcanic tuff, claiming that it is a soft rock that is easy to work with. Indeed, tuff is quite soft, but its softness does not explain the incredible complexity of the logistics. How could thousands of workers breathe in a cramped mine before a complex ventilation system was created? And how did they light the work areas without depleting precious oxygen with smoldering torches? And most importantly, why make such colossal superhuman efforts to go deep underground when there seems to be enough space to live on the surface? The scale of the work carried out suggests that it was not simply a desire to shelter from the rain or the raids of hostile tribes. Such a grandiose project required enormous resources, strict centralized management, and a deep knowledge of engineering geology, which, according to our history textbooks, they did not have at that time. What began with a missing chicken turned into one of the most mysterious and unsolved. Millions of tons of stone disappeared without a trace from the bowels of Cappadocia, but this mystery, grandiose in its scale, is overshadowed by the main question: what made 20,000 people, having access to the fertile lands of Anatolia, voluntarily condemn themselves to a life of eternal darkness and freezing cold? It was not a conscious choice.
It was a desperate, deadly escape, a forced evacuation born of a horror that cannot be put into words. Derinkuyu is not an ordinary city, but a huge, airtight bunker built with exceptional engineering precision and designed to ensure one thing: absolute survival. Every detail of this complex stone structure indicates that its inhabitants were preparing not for a short-term conflict with their neighbors, but for a large-scale, protracted threat that could arise at any moment. The first thing that catches the eye of any modern engineer who decides to descend into this stone abyss is the well-thought-out defense system. These are not primitive fortress walls that could be destroyed with a battering ram or bypassed. No, this is a multi-level isolation system that reliably shields the interior from the outside world and guarantees complete airtightness. The basis of this defense is multi-ton stone wheels. They resemble huge, massive millstones, reaching a width of more than 1.5 meters and weighing several tons each. Their purpose is to block all passages between floors in a matter of seconds and, above all, to completely block all exits to the outside. The most impressive thing about this defense system is its sophisticated, almost paranoid mechanics. These giant stone barriers could only be moved and securely fixed from the inside. If an external enemy somehow managed to penetrate the upper level, they would encounter an impenetrable, immovable rock that could not be moved even by dozens of the strongest and most skilled warriors. Similar but more complex defense systems were found in other underground cities, such as Ozkonak. They included narrow, oppressive corridors and deadly traps. In addition to wheeled doors, the builders constructed special death holes in the ceilings of the tunnels. These holes were designed to pour boiling oil or water on uninvited guests, representing a last, desperate barrier before the living quarters. It is clear that the people who built these structures did not experience ordinary fear, but rather a real, overwhelming horror of an unknown but incredibly powerful danger, capable of overcoming even kilometers of rock mass. However, the most amazing and, without a doubt, the most important engineering task of Derinkuyu is the provision of air. The city is located at a depth of more than 80 meters, and a constant and continuous supply of fresh air is necessary to sustain the lives of 20,000 people and thousands of head of livestock. To solve this problem, an extremely complex and sophisticated ventilation system was developed, consisting, according to various scientific sources, of 15,000 shafts. These vertical shafts, calculated with millimeter precision in diameter and depth, ensured uninterrupted air circulation even on the deepest 18th tiers. Modern engineers, carefully studying this system, have made a striking discovery. Even a slight error in calculating the diameter or angle of the shafts would have led to the instant death of all inhabitants within a few hours, when the oxygen would have been completely depleted by the lamps and the breathing of thousands of people. It is hard to believe how ancient builders, working by the dim light of clay lamps, could have performed such complex aerodynamic calculations without modern formulas and instruments. This knowledge surpasses what we usually refer to as the Bronze or Iron Age. The creators of Derinkuyu seem to have possessed knowledge that is inaccessible to us, people of the 20th and 21st centuries, and were able to use it without the aid of computers and precision measuring instruments. These giant mines not only played a vital role in providing fresh air, but were also the only sources of fresh water. Deep wells cut into solid rock reached underground aquifers, allowing for autonomous existence over a long period of time. The fact that the wells began inside the city rather than outside it suggests that the inhabitants of Derinkuyu did not trust the outside world and sought complete isolation. They had to be absolutely sure that in the event of any threat on the surface, their only source of water would not be contaminated or cut off by the enemy. This is not just a shelter from raids, but a completely autonomous, sealed complex designed for the long-term residence of thousands of people. Such a large-scale structure is necessary when it comes not to a short-term threat that will pass in a few days, but to a global, long-term danger capable of making life on the surface unbearable. But who were they really hiding from? Was it hostile neighbors who, according to legend, constantly ravaged this land? According to local legends and ancient traditions, the situation is quite different. In these parts, stories are often told about the so-called stone disease or war of the gods in heaven, which, according to their beliefs, forced people to go deep underground to escape disaster. Some of these traditions mention tall, fair-haired beings who came from the north, bringing with them icy cold and complete destruction. Unable to defeat their enemy on the surface, people began to dig into the earth to hide from their gaze and destructive weapons. These ancient tales offer a frightening but logical explanation. Perhaps people were hiding not from their fellow humans, but from a creature possessing technologies capable of destroying all life on the Earth's surface or polluting the atmosphere. And looking at the 15,000 ventilation shafts that thoroughly clean the air, it is difficult not to believe the worst. It was an ark built in desperate panic, designed to save an entire civilization. If the technology is so incredible, who created it, with what hands, and most importantly, when did it happen? As usual, official science, limited by the framework of conventional chronology, offers us a rather boring and inexpressive answer. Textbooks claim that the builders were the Phrygians, a people who lived in the 8th century BC and possessed primitive copper chisels. Imagine for a moment this picture. Thousands of people, in complete darkness, huddled together, methodically extracting 5 million tons of solid volcanic rock with copper tools. Were they able to bring this enormous volume to the surface without leaving a single, even the tiniest piece of debris, which would inevitably have turned the surrounding hills into mountains of construction waste? This is not just a typo in a textbook. It is a blatant, mocking betrayal of history that tries to convince us of the unbelievable. The point is that the construction of Derinkuyu, with its impeccable aerodynamic calculations and grandiose dimensions, is simply impossible for the 8th century BC. According to leading experts in the field of geology, it is beyond the technical capabilities of our civilization, even if we are talking about the middle of the 10th century. The only explanation that can be offered by a researcher who has decided to acknowledge the scale of this madness lies in the realm of forbidden, forgotten technology. The stone was not carried out, the stone disappeared. Imagine a process that does not destroy the rock, but rather dusts it, turning it into fine, weightless dust. Some engineers, analyzing the perfectly smooth, seemingly melted walls of some tunnels, have suggested that this may be the result of thermal or even acoustic treatment. Perhaps it was low-frequency resonance or a powerful energy beam capable of destroying or melting rock without leaving visible traces. That is why there are no rock paintings in Derinkuyu, which are usually created by ancient civilizations. They did not need to decorate the walls, they were the result of a rapid industrial process. They did not have to spend centuries digging out a refuge, they did it quickly, in a state of panic, using a force that was supposedly only available to gods or architects. If not the primitive Phrygians, then who were these architects? The only, albeit powerful, clue is provided by the local legends we have already mentioned. They tell of the jinn, beings born of smokeless fire and possessing the ability to control matter.
Or of the fair-haired giants from the north who came with icy cold and absolute destruction. Look at world mythology and you will find that legends of underground shelters created by unknown forces are found all over the world. From the Tibetan Shambhala, hidden beneath snowy peaks, to the Irish Tuatha De Danann, there are stories everywhere of ancient, highly advanced civilizations that went underground after some kind of global catastrophe. Perhaps Derinkuyu is just one of the gateways to this global network, a fragment of a single planetary arc created not to save all of humanity, but to save its elite, its most advanced part. The most likely and at the same time the most frightening version is a geological catastrophe. About 10 to 12,000 years ago, a cataclysm occurred that destroyed a highly developed civilization. Perhaps it was a pole shift that instantly changed the climate, or a series of powerful earthquakes caused by the fall of a huge meteorite. In this case, the bunker would serve not to protect against an external enemy, but to save from the Earth itself, which had fallen into a state of chaos. The wall of dense rock provides ideal protection from the radiation that could have resulted from the meteorite strike. 15,000 ventilation shafts leading to the surface are the optimal way to passively filter contaminated air. In this regard, Derinkuyu ceases to be a mystery. It becomes scientific confirmation of the existence of an ancient lost civilization that was aware of the impending catastrophe. But the darkest and most frightening mystery is the denouement of this story. If Derinkuyu was a perfect airtight ark designed to survive for decades, why was it abandoned? There are no signs of a break-in. The doors are not broken. They left on their own, in a hurry, leaving behind supplies and possessions as if out of fear of sudden disaster. What could have happened in this completely safe refuge to make 20,000 people prefer the danger of the poisoned surface to certain death in the depths? The only answer that frightens Derinkuyu with its mystical horror: they were found. Either the architects or those they feared so much discovered their secret refuge. The huge stone barriers designed for defense proved useless against a force capable of controlling matter and passing through stone. Imagine, after many years of living in safety, suddenly, in the very heart of the underground city, the lights go out. A rumbling begins, but not from the working ventilation shafts, but from the depths, from the unexplored lowest tiers. And this rumbling is not mechanical. It is not just the noise of a machine. It is something more. It is a warning. The inhabitants of Derinkuyu, who possessed technologies unavailable to us, could receive an alarm signal that was irresistible. They understood that their refuge, created to protect them from disaster, had turned into an airtight trap, ideal for meeting their creators or hunters.
Their flight to the surface was not a desire for life, but a desperate, last-ditch attempt to scatter and dissolve into a world that no longer belonged to them. Derinkuyu is not just a city of the dead. It is a monument to unspoken horror, a place where civilization collided with the realization that if someone wants to find you, there is no hiding place. And the mystery of their disappearance is still kept in the stones, whispering quietly about itself. The mystery of their disappearance is still kept secret. It whispers quietly and coldly from the depths, reminding us that everything that has been created can be found.